It's not what you think, Doyin whispered, her voice barely audible. I did it to save myself and family. The babies, they are taken away far from here. The black marketers sell them to the highest bidder. Some time ago, in the village of Elway, people lived in peace and harmony. It was a small community where everyone knew one another, and the traditions and customs of their ancestors were upheld with great pride. The air was always thick with the scents of fresh palm wine, roasted bushmeat, and that of herbs that seemed to carry the healing nature of the land itself. The people of Elway had a deep connection to their land and their ancestors, who they believed watched over them from the spiritual realm. They offered sacrifices to the gods of the land to ensure their protection and prosperity. Life in the village was predictable and steady, with each day blending seamlessly into the next, until strange and sinister happenings began to unfold. It started with whispers carrying the tales of missing babies. The first to disappear was Aduni's child, a baby boy, barely 2 months old. Aduni, a young woman known for her beauty and grace, was devastated. She had left her baby in his cradle one night, only to wake the next morning to find the cradle empty. Panic-stricken, she searched every corner of her house, screaming her baby's name, but there was no sound or sight of him. She raised alarm, and the villagers came together to help her search for her baby. They scoured the environment and surrounding forest, combed through the riverbanks, and even consulted the village traditional priest, Baba Ade, a man revered for his knowledge of the spirit world. Baba Ade chanted incantations and called upon the spirit for guidance, but all he saw in his visions was darkness, a thick, impenetrable fog that swallowed everything whole. Days turned into weeks, and there was still no sign of Aduni's child. Her once vibrant spirits withered into despair, and the village fell into a collective unease. Then, another tragedy occurred. Another baby went missing. This time, it was Yemi's daughter, named Tolani. The circumstances were eerily similar with that of Aduni. Yemi had slept with her daughter that night, and when she awoke, the baby was gone. Again, the villagers searched everywhere for Tolani, but she was nowhere to be found. Fear spread like wildfire through the village. Villagers could only sigh and hiss. They wondered the evil that had befallen their once peaceful and safe village. Mothers clutched their infants tightly to their chest, refusing to let them out of their sight. Fathers stayed up late into the night, weapons in hand, guarding their homes against an unseen enemy. Yet, despite their efforts, more babies continued to disappear, vanishing without a trace. The villagers grew desperate. They thought maybe the gods were angry, maybe they've done something wrong and they were being punished. So, they sought answers from the village traditional priest, telling him to seek the face of the gods. The priest ordered they perform some rituals to appease the gods, performing elaborate rituals and offering the finest goats and chickens in hopes of appeasing them. But the gods remained silent. The elders, the keepers of the village's wisdom, convened in secret meetings, but even they were at a loss. It was one of these meetings that Baba Ade spoke up, his voice grave and foreboding. "There is evil at work here," he said, "an evil that walks among us, unseen and unheard. We must be vigilant, for I fear this is not the doing of any mortal hand." The villagers were perplexed. If not human, then what manner of creature was stealing their children? Was it a spirit, a demon, or perhaps a witch? Speculation ran rampant, and suspicion began to fester among the people. Neighbors eyed one another with mistrust, and accusations flew like arrows, striking at the hearts of the village's unity. In the village, there was Akone and his beautiful wife, Oyinda. They had been married for several years without a child. They had tried several means like taking herbs, rituals, and many more to conceive, but all their efforts failed. Villagers pitied them and even prescribed herbs and healing options for them, but nothing seemed to work. Just few months after the strange happenings in the village started, Oyinda was confirmed pregnant. Their joy knew no bounds. Even the villagers rejoiced with them. But as the pregnancy grew towards the due date, Oyinda began to feel terribly scared. She couldn't imagine her baby, whom she had waited for years to have, would disappear like other babies in the village. One night, she approached her husband and made her worries known to him. "My husband," she began with a troubled voice, "with the strange things happening in this village, don't you care if something happens to our child? I don't want to lose my child, though. I have just 2 months left to put to bed. I think it's best we leave the village." "Nothing will happen to my child, and I can't leave my village for any reason. My village is my home, and one's home can never be compared to a strange land. Be rest assured that we are safe and our baby will be safe too." Oyinda wasn't pleased with her husband's decision to remain in the village. She knew her husband to be strong-headed and unwilling to change his decision. While she carefully expected her due date, she prayed her husband would have a rethink. Some weeks later, as the ugly event continued in the village, Oyinda gave birth to a baby boy named Ayomide. It was really a joy to behold. She was glad that finally she would be called a mother. Ayomide was her joy and pride, and she vowed to protect him at all cost. But as the days passed, Oyinda's joy turned to fear. The thoughts of losing her only child was heavy in her heart. Determined to keep her child safe, Oyinda watched her son closely, sometimes staying awake all night, her eyes fixed on her baby. Even though her husband had told her never to worry about their child's safety, Oyinda was engulfed with worry. One night, while Oyinda stayed awake watching over her baby, she fought sleep as long as she could, but eventually exhaustion overcame her. As the moon rose high in the sky, the village fell silent and the shadows grew long. Then something strange happened. While they were all asleep, a woman, drawn by the scent of a newborn, crept into their house and with a wave of her hand cast a spell of deep sleep over the house. But when she moved closer, she felt a powerful force pushing her back and felt a bright light burning her hand as she tried to carry the baby. Hissing in pain, the woman knew she could not take the baby by force. While she planned to leave there, she realized her legs were glued to the floor. She tried everything possible, but her movements were restricted. After several trials with no result, she began sweating and shaking and continued her struggles till daybreak. Oyinda was the first to wake that morning. She was shocked to see a woman standing inside their house. She quickly raised an alarm and woke her husband. Akoni wasn't too surprised. He had sought the help of a powerful spiritualist from a distant village, a wise woman who was known for her knowledge of ancient magic and protective charms. The spiritualist had given Akoni a powerful charm to place in his house. "This charm will protect your son and expose the face behind the evil in your village," said the spiritualist. Oyinda ran out calling on the villagers to behold the scene. In no time, villagers gathered at their house. They began to question the figure. There, standing before them, was not a witch, not a demon, but a woman they all knew well. It was Doyin, the wife of Chief Akinyele, one of the most respected men in the village. The sight of her sent shockwaves through the crowd. Doyin stood frozen. Her once gentle and kind face was now twisted in a mixture of fear and defiance. The villagers could scarcely believe their eyes. How could a wife of their esteemed leader be responsible for such heinous acts? For a moment, there was silence. Then, a man named Olaolu stepped forward, his voice trembling with both disbelief and anger. Doyin, how could you? You? You were the last person we would have suspected. Doyin's lips quivered as she struggled to find words. Her eyes darted around, searching for an escape. But she knew there was none. The villagers had her cornered, and there was no hiding from the truth any longer. It's not what you think, Doyin whispered, her voice barely audible. I had no choice. No choice? Afolabi spat, his face concocted with rage. You steal babies from their mothers and you claim you had no choice? What could possibly justify such evil? You don't understand, she pleaded. There are forces at work, forces far greater than you can imagine. I did it to save myself and family. The villagers exchanged confused glances. What could she possibly mean? How could stealing innocent children be a way to save her family? Olaolu, trying to keep his temper in check, pressed her further. What are you talking about, Doyin? Explain yourself. What forces are you speaking of? Doyin hesitated, her gaze flickering between the faces of the villagers, searching for a glimmer of understanding or mercy. But all she saw was hardened expressions, eyes that bore into her with judgment and contempt. She knew that no matter what she said, her actions were unforgivable. It's the black marketers, Doyin finally confessed, her voice trembling. It all started months ago after my husband's health started to decline. My husband was diagnosed with a rare illness, one that no medicine or herbal remedy could cure. The herbalist said he may die in few weeks. I was desperate. I couldn't bear the thought of losing him. The villagers listened in silence, their anger still simmering but now tampered with curiosity. One night, Doyin continued, a stranger came to our house. He was tall, dressed in fine agbada, and spoke with a smooth, honeyed voice. He told me he could save my husband, that he had access to rare medicines from faraway lands. But the price was unthinkable. He demanded something in return, something I never imagined giving. Her voice faltered. He demanded a child. Not just a child, but a newborn. I refused, of course, but then he showed me what he could do. He gave my husband a potion, and within days, my husband's health began to improve. The stranger returned and reminded me of the debt I owed him. He told me that if I didn't comply, my husband would die, slowly and painfully. The villagers were horrified. They had heard of the black marketers, a shadowy organization that trafficked in everything from illegal goods to human lives. But they had never imagined it had reached their village. I didn't know what to do, she sobbed. I couldn't let my husband die, but I also couldn't bring myself to steal a child. The stranger gave me more time, but as the weeks passed, the demands became more insistent. And then, one night, I gave in. I took Abeni's son. I thought it would be just one, but it didn't stop. The black marketers wanted more. They always want more. She looked up, her face twisted in anguish. I tried to stop. I tried to run, but they said if I didn't continue, they would clear my husband and make it look like it was an accident. They said they would take my children next, and then take me also. I was trapped. The heavy silence fell over the village as her confession sank in. The anger in the crowd had been replaced with a sickening sense of dread. They had thought they were dealing with a simple thief, but now they realized the depth of the horror that had invaded their village. One of the women in the crowd, Adune herself, stepped forward. Her face was pale, her eyes filled with tears. Where is my son, Doyin? She asked, her voice trembling with both hope and despair. Doyin's gaze dropped to the ground, unable to meet Adune's eyes. I don't know, she whispered. The babies, they are taken away, far from here. The black marketers sell them to the highest bidder, whether it's for illegal adoption, rituals, or worse. I never saw them again. Aduni let out a wail of despair, collapsing to her knees. The other women rushed to comfort her, but there were no words that could soothe the pain of a mother who had lost her child to such cruelty. Olaolu, his face pale with shock, turned to the rest of the villagers. "We need to put an end to this," he said, his voice firm. "We must find these black marketers and stop them from taking any more of our children. We can't allow them to continue preying on us." The villagers nodded in agreement, their resolve hardening. They would no longer be passive victims. They would fight back against the darkness that had invaded their lives. But first, they needed to decide what to do with Doyin. "What should we do with her?" Olaolu asked, his voice heavy with the weight of the decision. The villagers were torn. On one hand, Doyin had betrayed them in the worst possible way, stealing their children and selling them to a cruel fate. On the other hand, she had acted out of desperation, trapped by a powerful and malevolent force. After a long and tense discussion, the village elders gathered to pass judgment. Baba Ade, the oldest and wisest of them all, spoke on behalf of the council. "Doyin's actions cannot be excused," Baba Ade said solemnly. "But we must also recognize the circumstances that had led her down this dark path. The real enemy here is the black marketers, and we must focus our efforts on destroying it." The villagers murmured in agreement, but they knew that justice still had to be served. "Doyin," Baba Ade continued, turning to the trembling woman, "you will be exiled from this village. You are no longer welcome here, you and your entire family. But before you go, you will tell us everything you know about the black marketers, their leaders, their hideouts, and their method. We will use that information to track them down and bring an end to their reign of terror." Doyin nodded weakly, knowing that she had no choice. Exile was a harsh punishment, but it was a mercy compared to what could have been her fate. She agreed to reveal everything she knew about the black marketers, and the villagers began to prepare for the battle that lay ahead. Together with her family, Doyin left the village, her heart heavy with guilt and shame. She knew she had failed her village, but she hoped that, in some small way, her actions would help save the remaining children and bring peace back to the village. The villagers, armed with the knowledge she had provided, set out to confront the black marketers. They were determined to reclaim their stolen children and put an end to the evil that had plagued their community. The journey was long and perilous, taking them deep into the heart of the forest and beyond to the secret and dangerous underworld where the black marketers operated. There were battles fought, sacrifices made, and lives lost along the way. But the villagers never wavered in their resolve. In the end, they succeeded in bringing down the black marketers, rescuing many of the children who had been taken, including Adoni's son. The black marketers' leaders were captured and brought to justice. Their cruel empire dismantled piece by piece. When the villagers returned back home, they were hailed as heroes. The village had been saved, but the scars of what had happened would never fully heal. The memory of the stolen babies and the betrayal by one of their own would remain with them forever. And so, life in Elway slowly returned to normal. The drums once again echoed through the air, and the scent of roasted yams and palm wine filled the breeze. But the villagers never forgot the lessons they had learned, that evil can lurk in the most unexpected places, and that even the smallest acts of courage can make a difference in the fight against darkness. As for Doyin and her family, their faith remains a mystery. Some say they wandered the wilderness, seeking redemption for her sins, while others believe she disappeared into the vast unknown, never to be seen again. Whispers of her existence lingered in the shadows, but no one in the village ever saw or heard from her again. Years passed, and Elway prospered once more. The children who had been rescued grew up with the knowledge of what had been done to protect them, and they honored those who had fought to save them. The village elders continued to pass down the story of the dark days when babies were stolen and sold, a tale that served as both a warning and a testament to the strength of their community. But the story of Doyin and the black marketers did not remain confined to Elway village. It spread far and wide, carried on the lips of travelers and storytellers who found it a tale of caution and resilience. The tale evolved into folklore, retold in different forms across regions, each adding its own cultural element to the narrative. In one version, Doyin became a tragic figure, a woman cursed by the gods for her misdeeds, doomed to wander the earth in search of forgiveness. In another, she was depicted as a cunning sorceress who had deceived her way into the village to carry out her dark deeds. Yet another version spoke of her ultimate redemption, where she sacrificed herself to destroy the last remnants of the black marketers in a distant land. Despite the variations, the core message of the story remained unchanged: the dangers of desperation, the consequences of betraying one's community, and the enduring strength of unity in the face of evil. And so, the story of Doyin and the stolen babies became a part of African folklore, a tale that would be told around firesides, in moonlight gatherings, and during festivals. It will serve as a reminder to future generations that darkness can be defeated, but only if one has the courage to face it. In Elway, life continued to flourish. The village grew larger, more prosperous, and more connected to the world beyond its borders. The children of those dark days became leaders, healers, and storytellers, each carrying with them the lesson of their past. Like this video and subscribe for more interesting stories than this. See you in the next one. Goodbye.